Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 36th California Small Farm Conference. My name is Guido Lois. I'm a Communications and Events Manager with CAF, which stands for Community Alliance with Family Farmers. We have an amazing panel full of speakers that I will let speak in just a brief moment. But before, I wanted to remind you that this meeting is being recorded, and that if you have any questions, we ask you to please put them in the Q&A section. The Q&A is a feature that you can find at the bottom of your screen. And if you don't see it, just click under More, where those three little dots at the bottom right of your screen is. So you can put your questions there, and that will help us answer them. If you have any comments like Alfredo from FarmLink over here has, you can put them on the chat, but we are trying to keep those separate. I think that's pretty much all I have to say. I wanted to thank our sponsors for making this possible, and to all of our speakers today for being here and doing this with us. So yeah, the room is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Guido. I think I'll bring up the PowerPoint, and I think you're kicking us off, right, Jenna?
I am. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us today. We're really happy to be here and really happy to be talking to you about succession planning. We're going to talk a little bit later about why it's so relevant at this moment in time to be talking about it. And last year, we did a presentation on succession planning that was really focused on communication and tools to use, and sort of breaking out of these habits of communication that we sometimes get into with family members or people that are close to us, so that you can successfully, do succession. But this year we thought it would be fun to take a step back and just really dive into, where do you start when you're in this sort of liminal space of, I know there's a change that needs to happen, but I'm not sure how to get started or who to go to. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Just a few options for you in getting started down this road. Okay, can we go forward, Mary?
And Jenna, there was a question, will the slides be available? And yes, we will send the PDF to CAF. I don't know how they get distributed. Guido, maybe you could respond to that, but we're happy to share this.
Yeah, you will have access to the mailing list via SCAT, our management platform. So yeah, that won't be a problem.
Okay. And I will say that our slides, we don't have that many slides. And so I hope they'll be helpful for you. We are going to kind of buzz through the first three things on this list today. And we're really going to spend the majority of our time in a discussion. And we're hoping to have a really rich discussion and to leave a lot of time for questions at the end, for our amazing farmers who joined us here today. But this is what we're going to be talking about. So we're going to just spend a few minutes talking about who we are, what the California Agricultural Mediation Program is. We have a little poll to kind of figure out who you are and where you are in succession planning if you're a farmer. And then we're briefly going to talk about some challenges that we typically see when we're working with families. And then we're going to jump into, here are some strategies on how to move yourself forward, and here are some resources that you can draw upon. And then we'll spend, hopefully about 45 minutes in a discussion with our farmers. So we have 3 farmers here today, and they'll introduce themselves, but they each took one of these 2 paths that we're going to talk about. So they'll be able to discuss what it was like for them, what was good, what was challenging, and how they've been moving through it. So that's a little outline of today. So we'll get going with introductions. My name is Jenna Muller. I am one of the co-owners of Full Belly Farm up here in Yolo County. And we actually went through our own succession planning process many years ago now. So I don't know if I'll share any anecdotes, but I might jump in with a little bit of our experience if there's time. I'm an attorney and I'm a mediator with the California Agricultural Mediation Program, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that is. And I am also a certified International Farm Transition Network coordinator. So I did a specialized course on how to bring people through a process with the International Farm Transition Network. Mary, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Mary Campbell, like the soup. And I'm a retired estate planner and divorce mediator, which ends up being really handy for succession planning. I'm also an IFTN transition coordinator. And probably the more interesting thing is I drove tomato trucks out of Los Banos for a couple summers after law school, which was a nice break.
Okay, great. Well, I would love for our farmers to take a few minutes to talk about themselves, their families, their operations. So we have Jim Churchill from Churchill Orchard and Nicole and Vicky Fasciuto from Corky's Nuts. And we can, yeah, go forward. Let's see, Nicole and Vicky, do you guys want to get us started and just talk a little bit about yourselves and your operation? Oh, sorry, you're still
You're
muted.
muted. And Nicole and Vicky, I put that logo in, but I must have pulled up the one slide that wasn't changed. Okay.
Oh, no worries. It's all good. We like baby walnuts.
It's from your website. Yes, that picture's from your website.
Yeah, little baby walnuts. Yeah, you want to talk about the beginning?
Yeah, we moved here in 1975, Yellow County in Cape Bay Valley. The land we live on was my grandfather's originally, and my mother inherited it. And then we lived here, and then my mom passed away, 20 years ago. So I inherited the property. For the first, 35 years, we weren't really sure what we would do. We tried alfalfa, we tried a lot of different things, but we ended up putting organic walnuts in. And now they are like 40 years old. So we're
We have a new orchard.
That's true. We have a new orchard that we planted that's about 8 years old. But so it's a process in developing what we're doing with the land and how we're continuing on with it. So it's about 80 acres of land. And we got certified. I can remember when we first got certified.
2005.
Okay, 2005. And we're getting older, my husband and I. And so we're looking at our two children, Nicole and Michael, to take this on. And we went through the Regenerator program, which was absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend it. I thank Leah and Jenna and Mary for that. Thank you.
And Corky's Nuts, I essentially created the brand off of the farm about 8 years ago to directly sell our products nationwide through the website. So that's how we kind of built on that.
Is that my turn now?
Yeah, go ahead, Jim. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jim Churchill. I did not grow up in a farming family. I did grow up in this town of Ojai, in Southern California. My father planted an orchard of avocados on 37 acres in 1974. And he did that because there was favorable tax treatment in the 70s for people that wanted to plant orchards. And that's why a lot of avocado growers in California are people who used to be airplane pilots or orthodontists or professions where you used to be able to earn a pretty nice living and have some money left over, and you could invest it, take a flyer in avocados, which was a happening thing back then. So my dad took some money. He did not like the stock market. He took the money out of the stock market and he bought land in Ojai, and his play was going to be to divide it up and sell land as he needed money. And that was his deal. And that's the reason that I've inherited 17 acres, because he did that. What else can I say? We were originally 37 acres of avocados. Now we're 17 acres of 12 acres of tangerines and 5 acres of avocado, well, 3 acres of avocados and 2 acres of roads and barns and stuff like that. We sell, I have 2 associates, partners in this business. One is a woman named Lisa Brennis, who we were married for quite a number of years, and she and I built this business. And Mike Sullivan is my associate. He showed up 10 years ago, and he had a number of professional careers, short careers in other fields before he came to us. And he really, I believe that he found himself there. I kind of remember a day when I put him on the tractor and on the flail mower, and it was like, I don't know, I feel like I saw him lock in at that moment. I can remember the day. Anyway, we sell most of our income nowadays, thanks in part to the pandemic. Most of our income comes from mail order. We still do wholesale, and I do one farmer's market. We do 3 varieties of tangerines, and we do avocados. And with respect to the tangerines, we saw in about 2003, 2004, we saw cuties coming down the road. We heard that they planted 50,000 trees in their first summer, and we thought we needed to get out of the way of that as a commercial thing. And all of our values aligned with organic. We hadn't used any herbicides or any kind of agricultural poisons in many years, but I was using urea as a fertilizer. But anyway, we just made the transition to organic, and we've been organic since 2007. That's what.
And Jim, one of the unique things I think for you is your successor, Mike, is not a family member.
That is correct. And that's kind of something that we drifted into, and we'll tell you about it over the course of our discussion.
Awesome. Thank you. So just very briefly about the California Ag Mediation Program, from which Jenna and I are representatives, California. This program was started in 1987 through federal legislation during the loan crisis in the United States. And originally, it was to help people who had any debt issues, because of course that loan crisis, that was the main challenge around that time, or any adverse decision from a USDA agency, any type of credit problem. There was some language around wetlands determinations and grazing permits on National Forest Service lands and crop insurance. So when it started some years ago, each state was allowed to pick a certified program. We're the program for California, started in the Midwest. And then in 2018, we were able to get our coverage expanded. And now we can handle farmer neighbor disputes, succession planning, which brings us here today, lease issues, organic certification or decertification. We don't do the paperwork. We help when there's a challenge around your certification, credit counseling, and then the State Department of Ag can add to any state's list. So we recently have added, I think, contract issues and a couple of other topics. But today we're here to focus on succession planning. We're just letting you know in case something that's relevant for you comes up, feel free to check in with us. There's programs in 43 states, and they have to be run either through a nonprofit, which is where we're run through, or a land grant university. We used to be at UC Davis Extension, or the State Department of Ag. And there are, again, about 43 programs. Even Alaska now has a program. So enough about us. Oh, and that's the website. In case you're from another state and you're curious, feel free to check out agriculturemediation.org for more information. We know you're here for the farmers. Anything that we do through these programs, if it's on that list that I just mentioned, it's free. I think that's an important thing to include. Thumbs up from Jim on that. And then the process of mediation, which is what Jenna and I do, is a voluntary process that's private. So when you contact us, your communications are considered confidential. And then we come in as someone who's not involved with the parties to help the parties make the decisions. So we're not coming in to tell anybody what to do because we don't know the situation nearly as well as you might, but we want to foster some type of collaborative planning. And that works great for succession planning because we want to bring folks together, whether it's a family or in Jim's case, manager and the current owner, to work out what they want for their future. So now enough about us. We have a couple questions for you, and Guido has kindly prepared a brief poll for us. We'd like to know who amongst you has an estate plan. And I know that word can mean a lot of things, so we're going to allow a not sure answer for that. Some type of written down plan for the transfer of your land or business, or both. And also, who's talked to a successor about moving on or taking over? Have you had those conversations yet? So I think Guido is going to launch that poll. Am I right, Guido? I'm just going to check in with him. He's muted right now. There we go. The poll is launched. And then I think he sees it until
Sorry about that.
it's
That was
okay.
the wrong one.
And oh, okay. I didn't see it. So you're launching a different poll?
Yeah.
All right. So he's going to launch that poll. All right. That has been launched. If you all could just chime in so we get a sense. We've got a great group today. I see 45 people. That's pretty awesome. And I want to make sure. So while y'all are answering, I don't see any. Okay, great. We don't have any other questions. You're welcome, Anne. And we'll just give you a moment to respond to that. And we did want to give you some options. Have you talked to someone? The kind of is probably, I'm expecting a few of those because I think people have some type of conversation, but maybe not an in-depth conversation. So we'll be curious to see how that's going. And Guido's going to give us the results when we've got everybody in. It's actually allowing me to, I'm not going to chime in on this, but I think it would allow me to. Oh, and Anne saying, yes, we have an estate plan, but needs updating. Boy, we hear a lot of that. We have a lot of that. I think we've got something, it hasn't been signed yet. We've got something that needs to be updated. We've definitely heard a lot of that. And do we have results yet, Guido?
Yes, we do. 22 of 39 have participated. And I was waiting for some more, but if you want, I can end the poll now.
All right, we're going to give you 30 seconds if you haven't jumped on, because we want to make sure you get to hear from our farmers. So we'll just give you a couple more seconds, but if you haven't jumped in, that's okay. We'll just go with the folks that wanted to respond. What does it say? Move that bus, close that poll, Guido.
All right, and the results.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, I expected a lot of kind ofs.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah, pretty much in line with what we see.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, that's very close to the current data. All right, so let me get back on this thing. Why should you care? Jen, is this me? I'm just double checking with my colleague here. So here's why it's important, those numbers that we just asked you about. 70% of farmland is supposed to change lands. This was in 2018. So a lot of it's already happened, but over the next 20 years from 2018 forward, the prediction is 70% of ag land in the United States is going to change hands. We've never experienced a land transition of this magnitude before in the United States. So that's a really big deal. From 2018 through this year, I think that was probably a couple years old, 10%. I got to move this so I can see it. So 2% a year roughly is going to be changing. And that 97% of the 2.1 million farms in the United States, only 30% survive to the next generation and 12% to the third. So that's some scary numbers that we could be losing land. It's going to be passing through hands, and then the fallout rate is shocking. And I love this. I think it was 23% had said there was a succession plan, and sure enough, 23% is what the statistics show. So we're right in line with the survey. The primary reason farms don't make it is because they don't have a plan, and most of them don't. So we don't want that to happen to you all. And we want to give you a couple of options. We are certainly not the only options, but for heaven's sakes, let's not make these statistics be our legacy. I'm just going to cruise through these, but these are the challenges we see most often. I want to make sure, is there one more? No. So let me go back. That we experience working with families, one of which is the folks running the show have a hard time letting go, and the folks moving in have a hard time knowing what to say to the folks who've been running the show, right? They don't want to disrespect the legacy, but they also may have new ideas. How do you mingle those different types of emotions and conversations, especially in families where you can have a dynamic between parents and children where you're already maybe don't talk about that, or however that goes. Not seeing partners as equals. We can say children, but it can be a manager. We often see the person who's been running it doesn't necessarily see incoming folks as equal to them. How do we get that stature? How do people who are coming in find their voice? Can we talk about death and disability? Some folks are not very comfortable talking about death or disability. And guess what? You don't usually just die, you usually get sick. And no farmer likes to think about not being able to work. It's a very uncomfortable feeling. So it can be hard to talk about. Money can also be really hard to talk about. How do you share financial information? Sometimes people are very forthright, but often people's relationship to money can be secretive or just not necessarily what we put out front. How do you divide things up? And I know with Vicky and then her two children, that's a conversation that I'm sure they've had to address. How do you work with one child who's like super involved and then one child that's not as involved? Or how do the kids get along? So we have also seen a lot of the challenges working amongst and between siblings as being a challenge. Incapacity can be an issue. We've had families where memories challenges are coming on, and also substance abuse has been a challenge. Of course, when you live with people, you get stuck in habits of how you talk to each other. That's probably one of the hardest things to untangle amongst family members. But it's not just family members. We all have our communication loops, and Jen and I work very hard to decipher and translate so that people are hearing each other. Having meetings, this is a big deal. One of the benefits of working with someone who's not you is getting you to meet, because there's always so many things to do, particularly on farms, that it doesn't seem like it's a priority until someone's dying or ill. And we want to make sure we've got something in place before that happens. And how to communicate. some people think, why do I need communication? I just need an estate plan. Guess what? It's really hard to tell that attorney what you want to do if you can't talk to your kids can't talk to you, or you can't talk to your manager. It's not going to get you very far if you don't know how to talk about these topics. So they are very important in getting that succession plan completed. And then who do you include in these conversations? Spouses have played a big role in a lot of our families. And so how do you have meetings that can accommodate everyone? How do you want to integrate that? These are all can be very tricky questions. Jenna, would you add anything before I?
Only just that from my personal experience, the big one for us was the prioritizing and scheduling meetings. And it took us, when we kind of went through it, there was no formal program yet. And so took us 5 years or so. And luckily during that time, there was not a death or a disability or an incapacity issue. So we were really lucky that we could take that whole, 5 years to really think it through. But basically, what ended up happening was it would always go to the bottom of every agenda at every meeting. And then we'd never get to it because there was always more important fires to put out. And so making that time is a real challenge. And it's also critical for getting it done in a time effective way. I guess I would also add that in terms of the communication, we have had some families who didn't really want to share with their kids what they wanted to do. And the danger in that is that it then opens up your estate plan or what you wanted to challenges, because the people get this information after you've passed away, and then there's not a chance to ask questions and to kind of process it. And so that can lead to, damaged relationships amongst the people who are left and challenges to an estate plan. So that's why it's really cool.
Excellent. Oops, sorry, once I move off it, there we go. All right.
Okay, so back to me. So we're going to kind of walk you through 2 different ways to go about tackling this beast that is farm succession planning. And the first is a structured program that's relatively new. It is, as far as I know, the one of a kind in California. And it's a year-long program. We're currently in the 2nd iteration of it. And it just is start to finish, holds your hand, gets the right people to you so you can ask questions and you can be getting this information, and it moves you through, start to finish. And not just the retiring generation, it's the whole family that has to participate, or you need to have an identified successor. We'll talk a little bit about that. Or there's more of a DIY option that we're going to go into as well. But to get started with the regenerator, I think that I saw Leah Schwartzman in the audience. So I would love to get her voice in here. Leah is the very brilliant creator of the program. She works at California Farm Link, and she worked really, really hard to put this together. And so Leah, if we can, Guido, can you unmute Leah? I was hoping that she could talk a little bit about just why she has put so much effort into creating this program and what she saw that led her to say, okay, we really need to focus in and we really need to get this going, because I'm seeing farmers struggling. So Leah, are you willing to jump in?
I think she needs to raise her hand so Guido can find her.
Yes.
And then she did post a link in the chat for the regenerator as well.
Great. I think Guido can unmute you.
There she is. There we go.
She is?
Hello, folks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, everybody. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to talk a little bit about the regenerator. I'll first say that the regenerator is not possible without the partnership between California Farm Link and CalAmp. The integration of the communications and mediation piece into farm succession planning is absolutely essential to a successful transition. What we were seeing for many years, FarmLink has been around since 1999, and essentially since that point, we have put on these shorter term workshops, 1 hour here or there, maybe a full day. We even try to, 2 sessions a month apart. And each time we conducted these types of workshops, folks would go away feeling great with a large stack of resources in their hand. And then they would go home and they would tell their families about it, and they would put that stack of resources on a desk, and then it would get buried with the latest fires of that week or that year. And we wouldn't hear from folks for 5, 10 years after that. And oftentimes after there had been a crisis and they needed immediate support. And planning for succession in a hurry is not the ideal state of planning for succession. So we, over about 5 years, built out a program that we felt was just really comprehensive and holistic, walked folks through the process of succession planning, but also built in a lot of milestones and a lot of support along the way. We brought in the communications piece, but we also made it a cohort model so that folks are learning from each other, as well as learning from the specialists and business advisors that we bring in to educate people. So we meet once a month as a cohort to learn together and to have some camaraderie, because you're not alone. Every family has similar experiences between, personal family dynamics or difficult concepts to learn or to breach with their family. So by having a cohort learning model, and then in between those months where we meet, having one-on-one support from FarmLink staff and from CalAmp really is helping folks move forward through the steps and the milestones of farm succession planning. So
Here we go.
Perfect.
I think we have a couple more pieces that it's structured, access to professionals. You have to have sorry, I think this is you, Jenna.
Oh yeah, well, just, you do need to have an identified successor and to participate in the program, which is important because we want both parties to be kind of moving through it together. But I think there might be a few people in the audience who have done it or know about it, but it's really a wonderful program. If you can do it, we highly, highly recommend it because, there is a small fee associated with it, but you do actually get back more in vouchers to use with an estate planner or a tax professional. So you end up better off and, financially in terms of that as well. It's a significant time commitment. And, for folks who do sign up, we really want you to be able to commit to really doing it. And that can be a challenge for folks. But it is critical. You get out of it what you put into it. And we ask a lot, but I think everybody who goes through it in the end feels like it was definitely worth the time. Okay. If you don't have an identified successor, or if, for some reason, maybe it's geography, you cannot participate in the regenerator, you can do it by yourself. It's not impossible. CalAmp can, so we have one family, for instance, who they don't have an identified successor, and they're also not on the same page about what they want to happen with the farm. And so we're working with them outside of a formal program just to kind of help them with communication, and we can support you in communication. But in this option, you have to go out and find your own professionals, and you have to keep your meeting schedules, right? So there's not going to be a set time every month when, you're coming in. So, and meeting with us or each other. And so, but that can be a good thing if you maybe really need that flexibility. So it can vary, your schedule can vary based on your schedule. And your meetings can focus on what you think is a priority. And then you can go as long as you need, which might be a good thing, or you might end up in our shoes where it took 5 years. So, but this is another option. Go ahead, Mary.
We have a question from Tamara about, can the successor do the program solo? That's an interesting question.
I think the answer is no. I think that the whole point is putting together a plan for a transition. So I think you need, and Leah, hop in if I'm wrong about that, but I think that you do need to have, a kind of a current generation and then who you're going to pass it to so that you can get to agreement among those two parties about how it's going to work.
And I would just, even if it's a CalAmp only, I think we did have someone who requested our assistance, but the owners did not want to participate. And so it really was no way to have a succession plan if we can't talk to everybody that's involved. So I would say, it's particularly for CalAmp too, it's really hard. We can talk to you, but we can't really work out a plan unless we can include all the parties. Okay, let me get back on the thing. Okay.
Okay, so let's get to the important part. We're a little behind schedule, but so we have a series of questions that we want to ask to our farmer panelists so that you can kind of get a better sense from them about what their experience was like on the ground, in the weeds, going through it.
And now we can bring Nicole and Vicky and Jim into the spotlight, and y'all have seen the questions, but we can refresh you as we go through. Would that work for you, Nicole and Vicky and Jim? We just would want to make sure you're visible. So Guido, can you spotlight our farmers, and then we'll
My doctor is calling me and I'm going to take this call and I'll be right back.
Okay.
and then I want to just
Hi,
look.
it's Jim.
Oh,
Jim, we're
can
going to
you-
mute you. There we go. Do you have any resources for supporting farmers in finding successors? We don't at CalAmp, but I think that might be a great question for California Farm Link. Leah, even if you chat a response to that. And so I'm going to see if Leah would like to respond to that. And it's a concern that the current generation doesn't want to participate, but would if I came to them with all the info. You're welcome to talk to us or talk to Leah and have data and say, hey, Dad, we really want to have this conversation. And then one of us could reach out to see if there's a follow-up. So we're happy to do that kind of investigation if that would be helpful.
And Leah wrote in the chat that FarmLink does have resources for helping to find successors. So they do have a matching program, so that she would be a great person to reach out to if you have a farm but don't have successors and you're looking for young farmers.
Excellent. All right. Okay, Guido, can we now put Jim and the Fasciutos in the spotlight?
Yo.
There you go. They are pinned now. Great.
Oh, are they? It doesn't change it for me. So, but that, I think that'll be fine. So we can keep this up then as the Q&A, or I can stop the share. We can see them better. How about that? And we can bring those questions to you all.
Great. There we go.
All right. So, oh, good. Leah is continuing to post information. So folks, check out her links on the Regenerator. And it's whoever wants to start this off, either Jim or Nicole and Vicky, what prompted you to reach out for support around succession planning?
You guys go.
Okay. Well, I know I got a call from Mom saying, I found this program. We really need to do it. Will you do it? I know you're in Ventura, but they have Zoom and we have to be there. And, and that was it. So I was like, I'm in, Mom. I'm glad that we're having this conversation and we're happy to be part of it. But how did you find out about it?
How did I find it? Oh, it must have, Gretchen, a friend of ours who lives out here, is involved in FarmLink, and she was the one that told me about it. So you have to pay a little bit money to get into the program, but it is well worth it, well worth it. And we were in a position where we have our 2 children and we are getting older and we want to make sure the farm continues on from all the work that we've done. So it's absolutely a wonderful program. And I'm glad Nicole stepped in. Our son was not so, as we talked about it earlier a little bit, you mentioned not everybody gets involved right away. So there were challenges. There's still challenges. But we're moving, and we have our trust completed so far.
So I I'm getting old and I wanted to do something, and I actually applied for the regenerator the first year, but I was not eligible. And then I was at Eco Farm last year, and there was a panel, somewhat like this panel, and I went to it and I saw Mary, and I just went up to her afterwards and said, hey. And I got in touch with her, and Mary had to prove her bona fides to Mike. Mike is a skeptical kind of a guy. But he agreed to the first meeting, and she did prove her bona fides, and he's been an honest and active participant ever since. And for me, Ojai is becoming, I don't know, Carmel or Montecito or something. After the Woolsey fire and the Thomas fire, well, after the Woolsey fire, it burned a remarkable number of houses in Malibu, and a remarkable number of those people moved to Ojai. And then there was the pandemic, and a lot of creatives with all kinds of money moved to Ojai, and you know, I've gotten in the mail offers of substantial amounts of money just sight unseen for the farm, and I don't want to do that. It's not the community that I want to live in. And the only way I know how to not participate is to not participate. And Mike is a truly idiosyncratic human being, and I don't know what he's going to do with the place, but he's going to work it. He's been planting native plants all over the place for years. Sometimes in direct competition to tangerines. Anyway, so I found Mary, and we couldn't get into the regenerator, and we just decided to go for it on our own.
And then the next question, and whoever wants to take it first, since you took different paths, what is effective, and what was effective about the support you're getting on the path that you're taking? Jim, you want to go first?
I can, that gesture was meant to indicate.
Oh, okay, hand it over.
Yeah.
You want to go
No, you
first?
go first.
I go first. What was effective and not effective?
We're
Right.
going to focus on effective, but you can do the challenges too.
What was effective? Sure. Yeah. I think what was effective is that, like, for at least the regenerator program and just this process in general, it really has given us the tools and the resources to communicate, and maybe it might not be perfect, but that we get through to some sort of resolution or what would be best, and really hear everybody to try and create an outcome that works for all and everybody's wishes. It's not always easy, but the fact that we were kind of held in the cradle of the regenerator and CalAmp and all the resources was incredible, in my opinion.
That was a big help for you.
Mm-hmm.
And what would you add, Vicki?
Just the ability also to talk with other members in our group, like you had mentioned earlier, other farmers, and hear their situations, what they grow, how many years they've been involved, and going through the process and listening to everybody else's stories or challenges. It made us feel like you're not the only one with the little glitches here and there, and getting the tools you need to move forward in a certain direction of financial or lawyers support and things like that. It really, it helped a lot. And it
Yeah,
was nice to
family-
hear, be part of.
Families think our family is the only one that's got challenges. And guess what? Nope, you're not. Jim, what was effective for you about working with?
Well, I think the main thing is help in communicating and in dealing with the emotional aspects of letting go. I'm still confused about what I'm going to do and who I'm going to be when I'm not running the show. And that's hard. But being able to talk about it has been very helpful. And there have been some conflicts, and having a skilled mediator to talk Mike and me through the conflicts is invaluable. We've found a really good attorney, and I've got a financial guy, and I do know what I would like to get done, and Mike would like it to be done as well. So we have that in common, that we have a shared desire to get to something, even if we don't know exactly what it is. And I think that the description of this program implied that we have completed it. We haven't completed it. We're still working on it. We have another meeting with Mary next week. But
Yeah, we're in process.
we're in process.
Yeah, and I think one of the benefits of if you're not in Regenerator and you have an ebb and flow with a business model that might not coincide with the timeline of Regenerator, it gives you a little more flexibility. But you guys had some great professionals too, and I think Regenerator pairs you up with a lot of professionals, so it really depends on where you are. Well, how about challenges? So you said, Nicole, it wasn't easy. What wasn't easy?
I think so there are a couple things. Being an offspring, personally, I know my parents had asked my brother and I, well, what do you want? Like, what do you want? And it felt really weird to answer that question. Like, well, this is what I want. It just it doesn't belong to me, even though it would be an idea. Like, that was really tricky to navigate as one thing, and just that communication when a parent asks you that. And I think the other part was that as my mom was sharing, my brother didn't really participate that much. So that was really difficult, because you want to have these conversations, but you can't really have a conversation with everybody there, when everybody's not there and it's not complete. And so we tried to kind of make decisions on the best that we could. And what that also meant is the person who's not there doesn't get to voice their wants or how they wanted any of it, so it was also then walking around that, like, how do we make decisions so that we can still honor the person that's not really part of it? But, so that kind of made it complex. But again, we had the tools to kind of help us get through that. It's not 100% complete in that capacity, but, that was one of the challenges that we faced.
And the fact that, I had a vision, my husband had a vision. My vision was I inherited the property. Let's keep the property in the line of our family, which means my daughter's generation, my son, and then our grandchild. We have one grandchild.
But I don't have any kids.
She doesn't have any. And then it's like, then you have to think, well, maybe they don't want to do that. And so talking about, what do you really want? Do you want to participate in this process? Do you want to take the land? What are your visions of doing something with the land?
For
both of you.
Oh.
We have 2 pieces of property, so it's a little bit easier to kind of look in the different directions. but then there's issue with that situation too. So communication is absolutely very important to go through this process and have the tools and assistance to go forward. I think when Jenna, you're talking about family meetings, that is something we did not do. We're kind of like old hippies from days ago, and we didn't even have
I try.
financial.
I try.
Yeah, we haven't got our QuickBooks yet, but it's like, I mean, I had a separate job as we raised our children. My husband did landscaping besides the farm. And so there was a lot of components into what we have today and how we got here today. So I'm just grateful that we found FarmLink and we're moving forward in this. It's very helpful.
Mm.
And I'm curious if your vision, you said you had a vision to kind of keep it in your family. Has that evolved at all, or do you still have that vision, or over the
Well,
process, have you kind of thought, well, maybe I'm more flexible, or maybe
well,
curious how it
oh
evolved?
yes, I've had to learn to be flexible and open it up. And my husband's even made the comment of like, well, if when we die, we're not around, the kids can do whatever they want with the land, which is absolutely true. But they know where we're coming from. They've seen us work hard to get where we are today. I know Nicole for sure has that vision and wants to move forward. And so and I know Michael wants to live on the property, but when you talked about our siblings and spouses, I'm not sure if his wife really wants to come to the country. They live in the city. So there's stuff out there we're dealing with.
Hmm. And Jim, how about you? What about challenges?
Well, I think I think we're about to encounter a challenge. I think Mike and I have different ideas about what kind of continuing income I will receive from the orchard as my role changes. I believe, I mean, we'll find out pretty soon, but I think I want more income than he wants to offer me. And we'll have to figure out a way through that.
So-
Otherwise, you know, the legal frame, we found a pretty brilliant legal framework, which I guess I'll have an opportunity to talk about later.
Actually, do you want to mention, because I think it's fine to bring up the strategy you guys are using, which is quite unique.
Okay, but it doesn't need to be unique.
Right.
So let's just say that the property is worth $3 million. I don't know. I got an offer in the mail for 4, so maybe it's worth $3 million. It's high. Mike doesn't have $3 million. Mike and his wife and their parents don't have $3 million. I have a financial advisor, and he says if you get this amount of money, you'll be fine. So Mike originally found this lawyer, and he went to him, and he had a little difficulty at first getting the lawyer to understand he wasn't trying to get over on me. He was like trying to put something together that would be good for him and good for me. And the lawyer did come to that, and he's been working with us. And he's an estate lawyer who works with much fancier people than either Mike and I. But what he devised is this, that Mike is, okay, I don't have kids. And so I made Mike my heir with respect to the orchard and the business. And the lawyer suggests that Mike purchased from me an option to buy the land. And there's this thing that happens with an option on a real estate deal, which is it is not taxable until the option is exercised. So Mike can pay me the amount of money that we have agreed upon. And then he owns the option, but we set the term of the option to be, I think the idea is 30 days after my death, after his notification of my death. And So the idea is he's paid me for the option. I am not taxed on that money. I die, he becomes the heir. He doesn't have to exercise the option because he just inherits the money. The amount, the valuation of the land is below the remarkably high tax-free amounts that you can will land to somebody. And so it's just, he gets a new basis and the money is never taxed.
And it protects his interest in being an heir to you. I think one of the challenges for you two is not being a child. What if you changed your estate plan? And so this is a win on financially for you, and then it protects his interests, which he wanted some security around that. So it's kind of a neat idea. I think last year we talked about easements, but it just shows you these professionals can have some really good resources to share with people. And one of the questions was, we had mentioned a workbook last year through the University of Wisconsin, and I did post the link to that for folks that weren't necessarily doing the regenerator, but it's a succession planning workbook. So I just wanted to share that. Great. So
yes, and so Mike has been doing work at the orchard that is orders of magnitude beyond what he has been getting paid for quite a number of years, and he has wanted security. You know, he's wanted like he wants to know that this is going to happen because he's investing himself in it. And so the option secures his interest.
And you can see how these different type of challenges could arise, that when you're a child, there's kind of a legacy that you may feel like that no one's going to change that on me. Although we've had some families that have shifted around distributions. And for Jim and Mike, it's different because he's a manager, Mike's a manager. And so there's a little more risk that something could change. But it could apply to a family as well. So I think the roles of professionals can be very helpful. And Jim and Mike found the right professional for them. And that was one of our questions: what professionals were helpful? I'm wondering, Vicky and Nicole, you're going to be Nikki, then you're both. What professionals did you think were the most helpful for you?
Well, I'll say we had an attorney going into this process, but we changed that attorney to Margaret, who was an attorney who spoke with us through the program, and she has helped us, and we're still in the process of kind of tweaking our trust through her with her help. So she was very helpful. You and Jenna were very helpful in communication and just helping us see where our problems are and where we needed to work on things. And then I can't remember the gentleman's name, and I couldn't find my paperwork because it's probably stacked somewhere in my house. The gentleman who knew all about working with different families who could tweak it so that this person, if there's two kids in the family, this person maybe manages the farm and this person runs the business end of the farm. And I can't remember his name.
Rod Carter.
Yes, you're talking about Rod Carter.
Rod, yes. He was so helpful. Yes.
Rod Carter is amazing. And
Yes.
he was really helpful for a lot of families that we've worked with in figuring out what entity makes the most sense. And then also a couple families kind of created spin-off entities that the kids could have more equity in. Or if they were doing a project like yours, Nicole, with its marketing and sales, you know, that was all separate from the land. I think a lot of farmers, the land and the business is all tied up. And I think that's one thing that's been really helpful about the regenerator is that, and what Rod says is that you can untangle those two things so that there's two assets. There's not just one asset. And if a kid is putting a lot of effort or a successor is putting a lot of effort into a certain part of the business, then that sweat equity that they're putting in, they can have more ownership over that. So yes, Rod Carter is an amazing resource.
And Margaret just posted the Farm Link succession guidebook. So California actually has a great guidebook. I posted the Wisconsin one, but let's not forget that Farm Link has a great guidebook too. So lots of resources coming in. And I think we're good. So one of the questions now, I think people would be curious about, because Nicole and Vicky, you went through the process a couple years ago. Jim, you're in process with me right now. Where are you guys? So where are you in your process? And who wants to start that one?
So as Mom was saying, that there's still some things that we're working out, but one of the things that we found when we started the brand part of the farm about eight years in 2015, that was before anything. It was just like, here's what we should be doing instead of how it's been done. And watching the success of that has been great. And then for me and my husband, who are part owners of that business, it's like, well, how do we secure this for the business part? Like the farm is separate. And the regenerator and doing all of this really helped us look at what is possible and what we wanted to create from that and what we wanted to build on. And we've actually
We lost a
Which
little
is
bit of your audio.
But given the circumstance, oh, sorry. Yeah. I don't know where you lost me, but we've
You said
actually,
we actually
expanded to acquire.
Perfect. That's what it
Go on.
expanded.
Did I pick up in the right spot?
You picked up exactly where we lost you, which was expanded.
Okay, great. Yeah, we actually expanded into acquiring more land to be part of the business so that the farm is a little bit separate and the business has land, and that we're able to expand on that. So that's been a great thing, which also helped in the division of how things are broken out between the two, my brother and I, and so there's still things to be worked out, but it's been really great. Scary, always scary, but it's a great challenge. And when you have opportunities, you take them.
Thank goodness we have young people who can do all this.
Yeah, I'll be alive. Not kidding.
And Nicole, you finished and written estate plan that you didn't have completed before you started the regenerator.
Oh yeah. Well, that's another thing that I need to do. My husband need to do. I mean, you start thinking of all of these things, right? And that had us realize, wait a minute, like we have a business, we have real estate in New York and California. Like we have a lot of assets, and holy cow, we have no children. We have life insurance policies. If something happens to us, like this is a huge windfall for, for somebody. And it really had us think about like, what do we want to do? And we're in the process of working that out with Margaret. But when you don't have children, it is like, where does this go? Like who could we benefit? What nonprofits? Whose children of friends and family? Like it just really had us think about like, what kind of difference do we want to make for other people if we happen to go all in one swoop,
That's that death thing that nobody wants to talk about too.
I don't mind.
And Poppy also, I'll say something about, I still think of what she said, we had to write down all our expenses. And like I mentioned earlier, we're coming from the 60s generation.
Well, I'm trying to get them into QuickBooks.
I know, every day. It's sort of like, okay, every day's tomorrow, we'll pay our bills tomorrow. We always pay our bills, but it's like to lay out what your expenses are every month, how much this costs, because if one of us were to pass before the other one, can the remaining spouse cover everything? Is there financial support for that? So that piece of the program was helpful to get us kind of focused on what we need to do. Some people ever were, and I'm learning in my old age.
And let me suggest that.
So Jim, how about you?
Let me suggest, Vicki, that when you do go to QuickBooks, that you get Poppy to set it up for you. Somebody, because I did my own QuickBooks. I set up my own chart of accounts, and it's been quite a number of years. And I think that we're starting to untangle it and make it right. But if I had known, if I had, I would have saved myself a lot of trouble if I'd had Poppy set it up in the beginning or somebody who knew something, so.
Yeah, where are you now, Jim? How would you describe that?
We're just forging ahead. We have, January, February is the season for our Kishu tangerines, and it's our main mail order push, and it's also the fruit that, it's the only thing we have this year that has a good crop, and so we've been really hitting it hard since the beginning of January, and so we kind of not done very much this winter, and next week is our last mail order week. Just for
Almost there.
And we'll start up again when the Pixie tangerines start, but we got 3 weeks or a month of a break, and we'll do some farming and we'll start back up. And I don't really know. We have to set up a management structure, and we have to decide, like, how much money do I get to keep taking, for instance, and how do we do that? The attorney is suggesting a limited partnership for the orchard remains mine because it's, you know, he has an option, but he hasn't exercised it. So I own the orchard, and there's no change in the tax basis or anything like that, which is super. But we set up a management company, and everything goes through the management company, and then we take, if there's any money left at the end of the year, we take money out for the way I always have. So we've got legal stuff to do and some essential issues of agreement to figure out. And I have to change my estate plan in certain ways. And I think he has to devise an estate plan. I don't know that it's any business of mine. Because presumably I don't know, the attorney will tell me if I need to be concerned about his estate plan. And I don't know, we hope to get it done. We had hoped to get it done before the start of this calendar year, and we will sure have it done before the start of next calendar year, and hopefully well before.
And context-wise, we started working together last spring. So we're coming up on our anniversary of working together. So I think and I can say from where I am that I've been able to watch the progress, that you all are well down the road from where you were when we started, but that the season does impact that. And
just to say, I think you pointed out a really important thing, Jim, and that's that you have a really amazing sort of framework for how the vehicle, for how the asset and the business is going to pass, but there's also the whole co-management part of it. And so that's a whole other thing. And so there's a lot of details.
That really is one of the things that happened is that Mike, with his 40-year-old energy, he has another job aside from Churchill Orchard, and that other job has him managing and working with properties kind of all over Ventura County. I'm mostly in the Ojai Valley, but not entirely. And he sees all kinds of agricultural management strategies for tree crops, so for tangerines and avocados and citrus and avocados. And he also works with a couple of labor contractors, and he's just become a much better, more knowledgeable and more experienced farmer than I. I mean, I have 40 years, but he has far surpassed me in skill as a farmer. And you know, that's not always easy for me. So yes, there's like, how do we divide up our responsibilities? And yeah, that's the thing.
And I'm gonna, because we only have about 5 minutes left, I think, we have a couple questions that I don't want to miss in the Q&A. I'll read them, Jen, and let me know your thoughts, or anybody. It says, first one's, I'm getting older, but just bought a farm. Maybe not the smartest decision, but it is what it is. I want to find a way of transferring the farm to someone who wants to be a part of it early in its operation without obliging my kids, but also making sure I don't squander my children's inheritance. Is
Well,
that
you should work with California Farm Link.
Yeah,
That's what it's there for.
Well, there you go. Okay. So I don't think we can tell you what's possible, but I think it's a great question to explore. And California Farm Link has a lot of resources around that. But only you will know the answer, and also communicating with your children about your thoughts will be really important, so that people aren't left with a lot of surprises. The surprises are what caused the lawsuits after somebody dies. And this is a really good question. Question for CalAmp: what does the process look like when working with BIPOC farmers seeking land? BIPOC farmers I've spoken with have said they've had trouble because landholders have not wanted to pass their land to them. How have you navigated this, or other particular challenges? Okay. Oh, go ahead, Nicole.
Well, my husband is Black. So one of the things that we had talked about that we actually didn't resolve, and I'll just kind of add this of, even though my husband are married, if something happens to me and the land that I'm getting as our inheritance, is that going to him? So this is a very, very, very great question of like navigating those challenges, because it is quite a thing to not have access to. And that it's because even you guys were a little bit resistant to want to have that go to my husband if it was my wishes that I inherited, or something happened to me before you passed away.
Well,
And you
that's
and your
interesting.
husband are both involved very much in the business too. I think that's
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's part owner of Corky's Nuts. 100%. Yeah.
great.
Okay, that brings up a good point, because attorneys might say, you need to think about who you're letting your property go to, and maybe there's a divorce in your kids, down the road, and that's brought up. And so that brought up that again. So these are interesting things.
Good questions. Good questions.
And I can't say, and Jenna, have you, I don't think we've gotten a call yet that says, I would like to. We're happy to engage those conversations. Jenna is bilingual. We have Spanish speakers. So we'd want to make sure we have the right people involved so that everyone understands the questions and answers. But I can't say we've gotten that specific call yet.
Yeah, we have not had to navigate that one. But if somebody were to reach out to CalAmp and say, I'm having this issue, we could certainly try to initiate a conversation with the landowner to see if there was a way through that situation.
As someone's been working the land for years and years, they may want, just like Jim and Mike are doing, how can they have some security for their sweat equity if they're not taking the compensation maybe that they could have taken over time? And that's why we wanted to have an example of a non-blood succession plan today, because that's out there, and we want to be responsive to all these different situations. And Guido's appearing, which means we're getting close to the end. We're at the end, huh, Guido? Oh, you're muted. We have 1 minute. Or are we done? Because I would say if we can give our farmers one word of advice you'd give to other farmers, maybe as a closing comment, is there anything you'd want to shout out to our audience?
If you're uncomfortable, just walk into it, walk through it. You'll get it to the other side. That's it. It's not gonna feel good, but you're gonna feel 100% better on the other side.
It's an old hippie axiom, you know, wherever you go, there you are. And yeah, just tell the truth, you know, to yourself and then own it.
Oh, there you go. So we want to thank everyone for joining us today. And CalAmp is calamp.org if you want to follow up with Jenna or myself. And then Leah has posted a bunch of links. So we're always happy to talk further, and we really appreciate the opportunity to share more about our farmers and what's happening.
That was great.
Thank
So interesting. Thank you so much. Oh, Jenna, sorry, I
Oh,
interrupted.
no, go ahead. All right, I'm jumping off. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
sorry
you
about
all.
that.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.